All right, for some reason, the original patch notes got a little cut off in the beginning. So, hey, what's going on, guys? This is Mast, and today we're going to do kind of a day late little patch notes look. If you guys are wondering, by the way, don't worry. Today we're actually going to do a double upload. So, it's not going to just be a patch notes day. It's going to be patch notes that I'm going to try and get up pretty quick. And then later on in the day, around the same normal time, we'll have an actual video. But yeah, patch notes came out yesterday. Some of you guys might already be aware. Some of you probably aren't. I figured I would still do a patch notes video just because this is a big thing. So, for anybody interested, that's either missing out on it to begin with or just kind of wants my thoughts on it, I figured we'd do it because normally what I've been doing is patch notes videos whenever it's a big update, and this is a big update. It's going to be the new season because Smite's done that shift where it's like this is technically year 10. Year 10 has 4 seasons. We are in the final season, or at least we're about to be right now. PTS is up. Actually, PTS, maybe it went down or something, but like PTS in general has been up, and then the update I think comes out within about a week. Don't remember what day it's actually going to come out. It probably says here. So yeah, 10.9 on the way. Really big update. Bunch of skins. We're not going to look at them. Some of them look pretty cool when I was checking out the patch notes. Damn, that actually looks sick in here. I bet it looks kind of mid in game. That looks really clean here. Looks like something out of Baldur's Gate. So don't care about any of this. Event items, blah, blah, blah. Battle pass, don't care. Sorry, moving on. Bug fixes, still don't care. Game modes. Some rank resets, whatever. MMR is getting lowered to 3,000 for the cap for now, which means you can no longer be hitting 3,500. 3K is going to be the new cap. That should balance out the MMR a little bit. I think it's probably a good idea. I could be wrong. It feels weird. I don't know if a lot of you guys would agree. And also maybe some people can't relate, but like somebody, especially if I actually grind ranked, gets higher MMR, and somebody that gets higher MMR, it's really funky how sometimes players that are just as good as each other will be anywhere from 2,750 to 3,500 just because some grind for MMR cap and some don't. A lot of players will just kind of play ranked up until the point where they start getting in the bigger boy games, and they just kind of stop because they don't particularly care about it that much, or maybe just Smite's not their life or whatever. And so you get this funky MMR mismatch where some people should be really high ranked, but they just don't play enough to get really high ranked. So I think this will outbalance that out for the higher level. And other than that, it shouldn't really matter. So that's a thing. We're getting longer start times on every single map. Conquest's going to have 15 more seconds. Probably a decent idea. Although, ironically, I think they had just shortened it earlier in the season, and they're just kind of reverting that now. By the way, we're going to try and go a little quicker through these patch notes than the more recent ones that I've done, but this is a pretty big update, so we'll see. Ideally, I want to keep it under 30 minutes if I can, because some of these have gotten really, really big. So yeah, art update. There's going to be a little bit of a change to the map. Doesn't look all that crazy different. It looks kind of odd to me now. Geometry changes. There's going to be changes to the fire giant pit and a little bit of the area around it naturally, since that's going to impact kind of like the solo side of the map in the jungle. So the fire giant pit is now opened up. There are a bunch of different pillars. It's a big circle. Don't worry, you do not just walk straight out of fire giant into solo lane. It's not like, oh, let me just walk through the fire giant pit to go gank solo. There's still like a wall kind of past that still has a little bit of a cutoff point. But it does change that solo side gank geometry a little bit. It's actually kind of interesting. There's like a corridor into the normal pathing sort of. So there's kind of like 2 different paths in a way, which is a little interesting. But yeah, it should be cool for fire giant fights. It's going to leave it a little more open. I think there's going to be more freedom to try and play the fights the way that you want to, which is going to be interesting for contesting fire giant. Because in some ways it makes it easier to pull the camp, or I shouldn't call it the camp, but the fire giant with less risk, because you're not quite as like corridored in or whatever. Like you're not quite as compacted, so the other team can do what they want with fewer escapes. So you have a little more freedom to pull it, but then you also have more freedom to gank it. So it's kind of like easier to pull safely, but also easier to contest, where both teams have a lot more freedom to position the way that they want. So that should be interesting. That should be good. And then other than that, a little bit of changing around the mid-heartbeat camp as well, because that's also getting affected. Also going to change the pyro location a little bit. The way that they're changing that is basically those are now positioned on the opposite side wall. So there's going to be a wall between mid camps and the fire giant, and then pyro / mid camps will spawn on the fire giant side instead of on the mid side of that, which isn't going to change a ton. It'll change a little bit. So big new feature, bigger than the fire giant change. Maybe it's honestly about the same, but it's cool. It's different. So they're kind of adding back. God, what the hell actually did this? What did we use to kill to upgrade buffs? Scorpion? We used to kill Scorpion, right? To upgrade buffs back in like season 8 or whatever. They're adding something similar back right now. So now on the solo side small camps, we are going to have the shaman camp. And that literally is going to like replace Smalls. It's basically just the current Smalls is going to be the Shaman camp. And so the big minion is going to be the Shaman or Shaman. If it triggers you that I say it that way, I don't think it matters. Either way, but it's going to have that. It's going to be similar to a small camp to begin with. And then when you kill it, each time that small camp spawns for both sides of the map, it's going to be the same spirit totem, but it will basically drop a spirit totem that then upgrades any other buff. And I do have some video footage that I'll be inserting through the beginning of patch notes for some of the unique things like this that I recorded when the patch notes went live yesterday. But basically the way that works is like, let's say the first mask you get is going to be, we can just kind of skip down to here for a second. The blue mask, I'm assuming Azure should be blue, right? Pretty sure 10% CDR. So maybe that's what drops first. So both sides small camps, once they kill that mask will drop and there will be a circle around the buff camp where you'll see that that's available basically. And now when you do a buff and you pick up a buff based on what mask is currently present around that buff, when you get the buff, you will also get a similar duration for whatever this effect is. So if it was the blue mask, it'd be 10% CDR. So if we do blue buff, or if we do purple buff, or if we do yellow buff, we now kind of get that 10% cooldown just added in. So for solo, that's a great buff. That's what we want to do. But what also happens is as you continue to do those Shaman camps, those replacements for small camps, as the game goes on, as they respawn, each time you're going to get a new spirit totem. And each time that you get a new spirit totem, you can select between the ones that have been dropped so far. So as you get deep into the game, you'll just straight up be able to choose which of those 5 totems that you want to have on your buff whenever you do any colored buff across the map and pick it up. And so the way that works is there's going to be a mask on the ground that you can auto attack. I don't think abilities work. It would also probably just be dumb to use abilities, but you can auto attack it to select it. Otherwise it'll just be whatever is currently selected and you can switch between them to give you what you want. So I don't think we really need to read any of these parts. I feel like I just explained absolutely everything. Yeah, we should be good. So we can just skip on down and look at the actual totems. So this should be blue, yellow, purple, red, green. They really decided to get fancy with those colors. I believe that's what they would all represent. So it's going to be blue buff would be 10% CDR, blue totem, yellow totem would be 5% pen. Of course, these kind of match the rolls and the colored buffs they tend to get already. Purple totem is going to be 10% attack speed. Red totem is only going to be life seal, not power, but 7%. And then green totem is maybe going to be super slept on because it's insane. 10% health, 10% mana. That is ridiculous. So if we are picking up, for example, if we are late game and we are playing solo, support, whatever, this is probably giving us straight up from just the totem alone, not even actual green buff, but just picking up any buff and having green totem selected. If you are late game, this is probably giving you like 300, 350 HP as it's any sort of tank. And then even if you're not, if you pick this on any roll, you should be getting at least 200 once you're late game. So this is kind of OP and it probably needs to get nerfed because I do not see any world whatsoever where there is any math that makes these stats better than that. That is crazy. Just getting 10% more HP is so much better than any of these. Early game, I think you can argue it's different. But even on an assassin, for example, even on like a one-shot damage dealer, hella squishy, this should never be worth. This should never be worth. This should never be worth. Maybe cooldown's worth. Green buff OP is how it's pretty much always going to be. And then early game, that'll vary. Like early game ADC would probably like purple totem quite a bit. So yeah, something to keep in mind. But overall, I think it's a cool idea. I like it. I do think it's probably something that shouldn't stick around too long, but I think it's actually a cool seasonal event, which has been kind of hit or miss so far. Like I think so far, other than in the most recent patch, other than the Soul Cairn or whatever it was called, that's still the Skyrim reference, but you know what I mean. Those minions coming out, that was dumb. The other 2 changes were great. The existence of the basically capture the flag. I can't think of the name right now. The beacon, it's literally right there. And then the Unleashed Titans, really cool. The Cairn or whatever, not so much. And then they're adding this in, which I think will be a cool seasonal thing. And speaking of the beacon, it now lasts longer, sort of. So we can do a double Titan thing. Basically, the way this works is before it had the 3 loops, or the 3 spawns, it will now yet again do another 3, getting up to 6. And then also you get 1% physical and magical power per stack of that. So if you're getting super late in the game and you win every single one, your entire team will get 6% physical power, 6% magical power. And it gave you moves. I don't even remember. What were the stats on this before? I don't remember anymore because they're minor and doesn't tend to stand out. I think you got move speed, right? So I'm pretty sure that's still there. Maybe they took that off and they didn't really explain it. But yeah, basically there is now a second opportunity to run the Titans down if you get super deep in the game, which I think is a good idea. Overall, most games probably won't go that far, but maybe? No, most shouldn't. But like a decent amount will still hit the second Titan point, and I think that'll be cool. So yeah, other than that, conquest balance, I think we can mostly skip through this. This looks like it's really minor. If you guys care, you can read it for yourselves. This is actually kind of a big deal. Reduced respawn time on oracles by 0.5 minute and reduced vision by 0.5 minute. Okay. Or vision duration. Little bit baby nerfs to some of the XP and stuff. XP and gold on camps. So minor farm nerfs to the junglers. This is a big one. This is something I know a lot of people are excited for me to tackle this because it's literally, I talked about doing this the moment I came back. I literally specifically was like, we need more cheese. And then Hi-Rez was like, we heard you loud and clear. Let us whip up some cheese. And we're going to literally call it dishes so that Mast knows it's for him. No, I don't think there's any way they got this from me, but, but it is really funny how much it coincides with me recording again and talking about that like immediately. But yeah, they're adding dishes. These are like free starter items that you will eventually sell. In early game, you're kind of upgrading to a point where they actually do anything. And the idea is quite literally what I recently have talked about, which is let's spice up some builds a bit. Now, it is worth noting from my understanding of these items, having not even played, but simply read them, there are like 2 that are good and like 3 that are not worth picking. So yeah, let's get into it. Maybe a little different than that, but generally speaking, there are some that are just straight up better, and there'll need to be some balance changes if they want to keep these interesting, but that's okay. So first and foremost, they have added back a golden bow to ADCs. So SMITE is dead. Not really. It's not going to be that big of a deal, but but they are awfully bold going for this. So golden gooseberries is the first one. It is going to be the most controversial one. And the way these work is you have 2 steps to evolve them. So step 1 is normally going to be pretty easy. Step 2 is normally going to be a little harder. I don't remember if it's true for all of them, but basically one is going to be PvE, one is going to be PvP. At least normally, I think every single time it's like that. Maybe not every single time. And then once you've completed step 2 and step 1, then you're getting the final dish. And I actually just realized I don't know if you can complete these at the same time or not. In my head, I had assumed that you can just do both of these at once and that would make it easier. You actually maybe don't. You might have to complete step 1 and then step 2 because like that kind of makes sense. So I'm actually not sure about that. That might make it harder to complete. But yeah, kill 30 minions, easy enough. Deal 750 god damage with basic attacks, easy enough. And then once you get that done, you get this passive. All basic attacks will also hit enemies within a 10 unit radius of the target for 30% damage to gods and 50% damage to minions / jungle camps. So mini golden bow or golden blade, but I'm saying golden bow because you can actually build this on ranged characters. Yeah, you can even build it on mages. Mage is about to get wild. Freya about to be broken. So yeah. And you also get 50 gold for completing step 1, 50 or 75 gold for completing step 2 with all of these. And they're all free. I'm pretty sure I already said that, but just so you guys know, you sell it whenever you have a real item that you want to be building there. So you're going to tend to keep this to like 4 items in the build and then selling it off later in the game. And of course, because it's free, you're not selling it for money. You're selling it to make way for a new item. But yeah, this one's dangerous. I'm very excited to play like Baka, Arachne, stuff like that with this item. That's going to be crazy. It's also going to generally be nice for a lot of range damage dealers like hunters. But the big thing that I'm hyped for is just extra cheesing Golden Blade, honestly, because it's not going to be as noticeable when it's just the 30% to gods. But oh my god, man, when you can stack this with a Golden Blade and just dumpster with AoEs, I think that'll be super fun. So that's what I'm excited for. Sturdy Stew. Obtain 40 minion assists. Super easy. That's going to be a support one, obviously. Step 2, crowd control enemy gods 10 times. You may not gain more than 1 stack per 1 second. Because I guess when would you do this even? Who does this? How? I guess like Baron 3 or something. If it's like, I don't know. I don't know exactly why they had to put that in. Not that it matters. Being hit by a hard crowd control creates a pulse that provides 5 + 1 per level prot to yourself and allies within 55 units for 5 seconds. Can only occur once every 10. So it's kind of like a counter Stone of Binding, where instead of it being, oh, Stone of Binding, when you hit people with CC, shreds their prots, you being hit by CC gives yourself and team prots. Doesn't happen always, but happens pretty frequently and lasts a pretty long time. And it says creates a pulse. I don't know if that means it's constant or if it's just a one-time thing. If it's constant, that actually makes it stronger, right? That you can potentially spread that to teammates if they're not immediately within range. this is actually a pretty good upgrade for supports. Now, it is worth keeping in mind there's support and it's scaling with level, and support does tend to stay behind in level. So you're probably not going to very often be getting the full 25 potential out of this, but that is actually pretty impactful that in a lot of fights, you'll probably be sharing at least 15 prot with teammates nearby, as well as yourself, with a free item that is super easy to stack. So yeah, should be pretty good for support specifically, and probably outside of that, people won't care too much. Bountiful Bow. This is probably the wildest one, even if it's not super exciting, I feel like the Golden Bow one. But step 1, spend 1,000 mana. That should be pretty easy. Step 2, deal 2,000 god damage with abilities. Not as easy and less specific, or not less specific, more specific. So you can't just build this on anybody and easily stack it as well. Worth keeping in mind. Because there are gods where this will be hard to stack because you don't have very good ability damage. It's not really what you do, but you might still actually want the upgrade for it. So that's kind of interesting. But Final Dish passive, when you use a non-ultimate ability, its cooldown is reduced by 1.5 seconds, may only occur once every 8 seconds. So yeah, this is a pretty big CDR effect. It's going to be really strong, and it's going to be menacing on some characters like Hebo, who already tend to tilt people. Bountiful Bow might tilt them a little harder. It's going to get a little bit ridiculous. So yeah, it is. Of course, it does not constantly proc, but once every 8 seconds is pretty often. This, I think, far and away the most obviously strong one, because this is a pretty big CDR reset, and you can use it on like any god in the game. It's so often going to have an impact, because as long as you're somebody that just wants cooldown, this is good. And it's just a question of whether or not this is easy to do in order to stack it up. But of course, like Golden Blade passive still really strong on a lot of characters. And if I remember right, these two are both kind of lame. So we'll move on to those. But yeah, I definitely think Golden Gooseberries, Bountiful Bow are going to be the ones that tend to get bought in general. And then support probably will actually like Sturdy Stew. So let's move on to Party Punch. This one's very much meant for junglers. It's very obvious. Step 1, killer assist 30 jungle minions. Very easy. Step 2, traverse 1,500 units. If you guys don't know, that's like 15 raw ults. Might be a weird metric to go by. That's kind of a way to put it. I feel like it's it might sound like, what the hell is 1,500 units? Is that a lot? It's kind of a lot, but like it should really just take like minutes to get it done. So yeah, if you're just running around the jungle, you'll get it pretty easy. And then the passive, very much a Merc passive. Every 100 units traveled, you gain a buff that deals 20 plus 15% of your power physical damage to the next enemy hit with your next basic attack or ability. So I feel like this is one where some people will be like, that sucks. And some people will be like, that's broken. So let's do the math and let's talk about why it sucks. So 50, you keep in mind, this is an early game item. You are not keeping this late game. That's absolutely stupid. It has no stats. You want a real item late game. You're only going to keep this through like the mid game. So let's think about around the time it gets finished, 1 or 2 items into a build, you are probably going to be looking at somewhere between 30 and 70 power, right? So you're doing 20 flat, that's just going to happen. And then you're getting 15% of somewhere between 30 and 70. So even if it's 70, that's 10 power. That's 10 additional. We are getting up to 30. And then if it's 30, it's tiny and it's way less. So realistically, around the time we're getting this done, we're getting maybe 30 flat damage that will then be mitigated, added on to a single instance of damage. And then like we can do that fairly often because it's like every gank we're going to get one of these. But then we can also waste it on minions. And then also it's just 30 damage and it's not 30 true damage. So this one should be pretty weak. I feel like you can absolutely make the argument on like some characters where it's still technically the best one to get. But I also think if you're ever building this, you're feeling bad that you're building this and that you can't better use either Bountiful Bow or Golden Gooseberries. So it exists. It shouldn't be very good. I think they're definitely going to want to up the damage on this. With the big thing be, I think they should really up the scaling on this quite a bit if they want to spice it up. I don't think there should be a ton of flat damage, but at least up the scaling a lot because just it's not going to scale very hard at the stages of the game where you're going to have this. So Durable Drumstick. Solo item, very boring. I wish they came up with a different one for this one. This is the only one that actually disappoints me as a concept. Step 1, dealer take 1,500 god damage. That's actually a decent bit. That's going to take a little while. And then step 2, successfully damage an enemy god 20 times with basic attacks or abilities. This may occur only once every 2 seconds. That one should not be as hard, ironically. And then Final Dish passive, being out of combat for 5 seconds grants you a buff that reduces the damage of the next basic attack or ability from a god by 20%. This one's weird. Like obviously solo lane likes to be tanky. That makes sense. Solo lane also likes to brawl, which means not being out of combat for 5 seconds. And then solo lane also tends to have a lot of fighting where you're getting hit by a huge variety of things and none of them hit particularly hard, especially not whatever you're getting hit by first, which means you're mitigating something that doesn't necessarily do that much damage. So this item feels weird where most of the time it should be bad. It's not making you stronger in terms of power. And if there's anything that's obvious right now with the current solo meta, it's that solos desperately want power in any way they can get it. Because if Frostbound is becoming meta with 25 power and 0 defense, then just because it has sustain and HP, so it's like you're kind of tanky and you get some power, then like clearly they want more damage. And this is very much the opposite, where it's like be tankier, but who cares because you can just not die forehead is kind of how I feel. Like it's not going to do that much to make you tankier, and it's not going to feel very good. And I very much struggle to see that being better than going Bountiful Bow or the Golden Gooseberries on any single solo laner. Because you're either more ability based and you want to get that back, or you're more auto attack based and you get bonus wave clear and it'll actually stand out a lot. So yeah, I think this one's going to be bad. Moving on to items, we're going to skim through these somewhat. Mannequins getting cheaper, Mannequin Mace getting 15% attack speed, decent buff to Mannequins, but Mannequin still sucks, some mild buffs to Vamp Shroud and its upgrades. Absolution, half a second bonus CC immunity on its passive. That might make it a little more usable, but it's still just something that's very situational to be able to use because it kind of depends on not only the very moment that you're in, but the ult that you can cast. So I still think this is kind of a cool concept for an item, but I think it needs a better way to proc for it to really become anything. I still think, like, Hi-Rez wants to keep the game more casual. I still think it'd be cool. And given this might not work well for controller players, I don't know how much extra space you guys have for hotkeys. I think it would be cool if some items like this had hotkeys that you could bind in the game. If we're pressing 5 to activate our item or something, you know? Because some of these item passives, like Absolution, specifically don't work well because they're proccing off of abilities, but the concept is actually cool. So I kind of wish we had some items that were effectively also relics that we could pop. Not most of them, not like let's necessarily pop Erendite or anything, but just in general that they have that freedom to add that to the game if they want. I think that just fixes Absolution entirely. And then they would have to nerf it because that would make it immediately OP. Aussie getting a little bit of a buff. Divine Ruin, Erosion, Jotun's Vigor, Male Renewal getting a decent buff, but it's probably still not great. Increased mitigation to Onis for some reason. I feel like they're always bouncing back and forth between 4 and 3% with this item, as if it's never, like, it's just leave it at 3, man. It is fine. This item, 9% mitigation is pretty decent. I think we're okay with that. The only reason this item's fallen out of favor very much is because Heartward Amulet, whatever the hell you call the upgrade for that, got so OP for a while. Extra pen on Toxic Blade, but still probably not going to feel good to build it. More HP on Warlocks. Tablet got cheaper. Now we're getting to another spicy part of the patch, which is minor reworks to gods. Now, I am not going to weaken you. This is not actual reworks. This is pretty mild, but it is big changes to the characters in terms of buffs, pretty much exclusively. I don't remember if any of these were really big nerfs. But yeah, it's not going to overall change the god that much. These are just pretty big buffs generally, especially Chernabog down below. It looked pretty scary when I skimmed it. So, Apollo. When passive is active, he gains 20% increased basic attack projectile speed, which is basically half of Griffin Wings bonus. Worth noting, while in theory that makes this sound buffed, I actually feel like this can also troll you, because your autos are going to go faster, and in Smite, especially when people are strafing, you do lead your auto attacks. You just literally have to, depending on the situation, sometimes by a lot. And so sometimes this will make you change the way you aim when it's anything where you're significantly aiming side to side. And that might actually be bad. So, like, I think the idea is interesting, and it's maybe just a good change. Maybe just a good concept for his passive. But I actually think, ironically, especially for better players that are used to that, I think it actually might sometimes be like, God damn it, my passive procced, and I whiffed everything by a tiny bit. I could actually see that happening in certain situations. Other than that, these are all just big buffs to him. So beautiful. Increased projectile speed from 110 to 150. That's going to go a lot faster. A little bit of bonus scaling. He now gains magic prot along with the physical prot on his 2, so that he can actually tank mages a little better. And then pretty big buff to the ultimate. It lands faster and the ticks go faster. So you're going to have way more of a quick ultimate landing. So you're more likely to get your damage off, more likely to get the knockup off. They have less time to react. That's pretty strong. Like, not only is it easier to hit, harder for them to react. That's actually a big deal, because Apollo is really strong a lot of time if you land all of it. It's just once you get to a certain level of smite, it's so easy to react to for the most part, where it's like, oh, Apollo ult, I'm just going to jump, or I'm just going to Aegis or whatever. So yeah, that'll help a little bit. And they decrease the mana cost, but honestly, that doesn't tend to be a problem for him. At least not anymore. It definitely used to be. So Chernabog got buffs as well. These do get a little crazy. Increased projectile speed on the 1 from 105 to 125. That'll be nice. This takes a while to deploy. Decreased minimum air time from 0.2 to 0.1. I believe that only applies point blank is what that means, is that point blank it'll shoot out faster. And then I don't know what the hell this means. Increased collision radius from 20 to 25. I think that's just, what is this? I don't know what this is saying. And then added 25% slow for 2 seconds on initial hit. That's kind of a big deal. If you're landing this and then trying to follow up with the 2, I mean, or with anything, but like a lot of time you're following up with the 2. That's kind of just how the character works. 25% slow is going to make it a little easier to land those 1-2 combos, and that going on top of the increased projectile speed and the decrease to the minimum air time. So easier to get that off and land it, which is big for Chernabog. And then here's the huge change. Shifted duration on the 2 from 3 to 5 seconds, and we just played him, so a lot of you guys have just seen me abuse this ability, to 4 seconds. So at max rank, it lasts less time. At minimum rank, it lasts longer. But they decrease the cooldown on the 2 from 12 to 7. And keep in mind, Chernabog 2 is not only going to be this still strong stim, but it is basically an AoE auto attack that will go through walls, unless I'm misremembering. I believe it goes through walls. And it's now on a 7-second cooldown. And then if you want to get a little cooldown in that build, like a fail knot, like I talked about potentially doing instead of rage in that recent Chernabog video, then you can get this thing down to like a 5-second cooldown. Or like 5.5, I guess is what it'd probably be. And then if you go full cooldown, which probably wouldn't actually be good, you can get it down to like a 4-second cooldown. So I actually could see a new cheese build being similar to the one I just did, where it's like fail not crit Hi-Rez full cooldown. Yeah, going for like one shots with the 1-2 combo being kind of a thing now. I don't know. I don't think it'd be meta, but this is a pretty big shift. And then a bit of a nerf to the mana as well. Or I guess a buff, but like making it cheaper. And then also they made his 3 faster. They increased the damage. They took away the slow. That slow is basically shifted over to the 1, which they also do later on with Athena. Pele, who I think today's video is going to be, just got buffed. Wasn't buffed in the video though. This ability now provides 5 to 9 fuel on successful hit of the enemy. For Pyro class, that's her 1. One thing that's big with this, I don't know for sure if they're referring to every single instance of landing it, or if it's just hitting an enemy a single time. Because it's worth keeping in mind, Pyroclast is not just a projectile, it has the return projectiles, and so it's a really big difference if this is just, oh, I hit a god, and no matter how many of those returns I get 9 fuel. But it's also, can you hit multiple gods, and then does each little return instance also give you fuel? Because if so, this ability is now potentially giving you like all of your fuel back in the right situation, and that is insane. Which I think is a really cool concept too. So this will be one to play with. I'm not sure how that works. That'll be a big deal. And then Volcanic Lightning gets 1 more hit and it does more basic attack damage than it used to. So that's one thing if you guys don't know. This is something they did maybe when she came out. I think it was one of the nerfs to her because she was so broken with her ult when she came out. But basically Pele ult autos before the cone damage do less damage. The way that it works is you do reduced auto damage, but then you have the cone, and the cone hits really hard. So they're actually making it so those autos now hit 10% harder. So it was 50% damage, now it's 60% damage, and you get the extra hit. So that's a really big buff overall for Pele, which is cool because Pele is definitely somebody that tends to feel awkward, or like she's capable of dumpstering early, but is she worth playing early? And then late game she tends to suck, and this will help her not suck as much. So yeah, that'll be good. Arachne gets a big buff. Arachne Cocoon, her 2, now only needs 2 hits to stun instead of 3. That makes it way easier. Really big deal. Decrease the duration of the buff from 6 to 4 seconds. That's still okay. Decouple the stun from the attack speed stim, which I did not realize they did when I skimmed this. Wow. So she just straight up gets the attack speed for 4 seconds? That is huge. So now I'm curious. No way that... You definitely still have to land every auto to get the stun, right? I'm assuming. Like, they don't say anything about that, so I'm assuming you still can't afford to miss and hit a minion. That's really big that the attack speed stays. That's actually a huge Arachne buff. This one I think is a little weird, honestly. I don't think it's actually going to do that much. Increased number of Broodlings from 2 at all ranks to 2 at every rank except the max rank. Especially with this change, it's going to tend to feel really good maybe to max the 2 after your 1. And then either way... by the time you're hitting max rank on the 3, you should absolutely have your 1 leveled. So the soonest you're reaching this is like level 13, right? Level 13, level 12, something like that. And then you're getting 3 more or 1 extra spider on that rank at level 12. And then by then spiders don't tend to be relevant, and it's just the web that's relevant. So I don't think this really matters at all, honestly. Like, this is actually so negligible. They could give her like 1 more auto attack damage, and I feel like it would stand out at least as much. And then Nightcrawler gets a little more range, which will be nice. That feels a little weird. Thoth gets a bit of a buff. This one's not crazy. 1% penetration per stack on his passive. That actually might be pretty strong. I don't remember how much his passive stacks. I don't even remember what his passive is, honestly. So yeah, I hate Thoth. I don't know what his kit is. I just don't know what his passive is. Does more damage to minions with his 1 or to jungle minions. Who cares? Increase basic attack damage by attacking through the glyph. Only basic attack damage through his 3 by a little bit. Goes up by 10 per rank. And then Final Judgment hits a little bit harder. Little bit of a Thoth buff. I'm pretty sure this is going to be 3 to 5% pen on passive. I just don't remember how that works or anything. So that's going to be the biggest overall takeaway from the update for Thoth. And then this one's weird. I kind of get the idea, but I also think it's really misguided. I'm not trying to be a dick, but I actually I don't comprehend what they're trying to do with Raijin here. That at least will actually happen. So Raijin, they're trying to increase the influence of basic attacks. And that is so bizarre to me. So every basic attack on enemies, and this says enemies, not gods, so this should be on minions, reduces Raijin's non-ultimate cooldowns by 0.2 seconds. Gets bonus initial hit damage to the 2 on Raiju for whoever actually gets hit by it, makes it faster to cast his 3, and then his ultimate now does kind of the Janus treatment, but in a stat that doesn't really matter. He gains attack speed per level that he puts into that ability. So the idea, I'm assuming early game, is that, okay, you're auto-attacking minions, you're getting your cooldowns back a little bit faster, only a little bit because it's 0.2 seconds per auto. You have an attack speed of 1, basically, so like, if your cooldowns are 10 seconds, maybe you're autoing 8 times over 8 seconds every single second that you can, and then you get your cooldowns 2 seconds faster, and that makes you stronger on clearing waves / fighting around waves. So like that does something, but this implies that they want it to do things late game, and you just don't really auto attack on Raijin late game. Your 1 is a channel, your ult is a channel, you're a mage. There's not really a reason to. Best case, you want to like poly or just min-max a little bit, and then attack speed's still not going to stand out very much, and it's funky. I don't get it, but it's there. This is really, to me, this is the big takeaway, is that Raiju does more damage. Arthur getting some changes as well. Arthur making it so that his passive now lasts 10 instead of 15. They decreased the stacks from 4 to 3. The mitigation got cranked, so he now got before up to 4% mitigation, now up to 7.5% mitigation. And he also gains 5 HP 5 per stack, which would be 15 HP 5. Which actually would stand out quite a bit. That'd be a little over half of what a lot of the HP 5 items that you're building early game are giving you in the solo lane. So basically, he's going to gain energy slower because he's going to get fewer stacks, but he's not going to be able to keep those stacks as long, but he is going to sustain better in lane, and he's going to be tankier in lane and in team fights. So harder to generate those ults as fast, which I think is an okay change. And then going to be tankier, going to be healthier. I think it's actually probably a pretty good shift for Arthur. And I think even though some people might not like the energy being gained slower, I think it'll actually overall just feel good for him. And then his 2 gets a little bit stronger early game, gets 30% slow to start instead of 20. His 3 got fixed a little bit, so it actually shreds more prot. And then his orange 3 hits a little harder early game and late game. So especially when you're getting the first rank in this ability, it'll stand out a little more because it did absolute potato damage in rank 1. And then they're giving that basically a 50% boost and then a little boost on the final hit as well. So that'll be nice. Osiris getting similar magic mitigation to physical mitigation in his passive. And then also when he gets that passive fully stacked out, he's getting 20% bonus attack speed, which shouldn't be crazy, but it'll be nice. You use that Osiris passive fairly often, and you just straight up get it when you ult. This is the biggest one. This projectile, this projectile now passes through and damages enemy minions for 50% of the total damage. I honestly kind of wish they upped that from 50 to 75, or maybe even just try and do 100% and see how it goes, because Osiris is so bad right now, and overall these changes actually aren't that crazy. And he is straight, he has to be worst god in Smite right now. He is so bad. He is just straight up trash. If you guys try him any role, he feels terrible unless it's just a stomp of a game, especially if you get late game. Because Osiris is somebody that I like to have fun with. You could do some weird things with him, and he's just been feeling so bad for a while now. So yeah, he gets more wave clear now, and it's very much easier to land the one in lane. I guess in all fairness, I have been sleeping on this. It does imply that it will still hit a god for the full damage if it goes through the wave, right? So that's actually a really big buff on its own. Maybe this is fine. Maybe they don't need to make it more of a wave clear, because just being able to hit a god through wave is a really big buff for his one. That means he can max it fairly easily now, since he could already wave clear with his cleave. And then also the 3 decreases attack speed a little bit. Probably doesn't tend to matter that much, honestly. Normally Osiris 3 is kind of just doing what it does anyways, so I don't think that'll tend to matter a ton, but that's definitely a little bit of a buff. Ares also got some very weird changes. I was forgetting this. This is probably the weirder change than Raijin. This part makes sense. I think the rest are kind of funky. So Ares is getting more auto attack damage. I don't know why. I really, like, we just played Ares. I did weave in some autos. I am not really going to tend to notice very much if those autos hit even like 50% harder. So yeah, a little bit more basic attack damage to start. He gets significantly more basic attack damage scaling. And then he is now granting him and his allies bonus basic attack damage in his 2, but nerfing the duration of his 2. So overall, at least for Ares, this is going to feel like a nerf, but maybe he buffs his teammates enough that it's okay. And then they added 20% damage mitigation to channeling his ult. That's a great change. I actually think it should be higher, because you have characters, I've talked about this literally since Dodgy released, which was in like season 5. Dodgy got better Ares ult. Basically, like, unless you just potato her chains, she just got, like, you actually just go up in the sky, you CC immune, you damage immune, and then you pull people, and then you go where you want. That's insane. Ares has nothing close. So really, I think this should be like 30 to 50%, and that would be fine for his ult, because his ult's so punishing. It takes so long to cast. You move slow as hell. It just feels like such an outdated ability. So this is a good shift, like, in the right direction for him. I think they can crank it harder, because this is so much of what he used to do. It tends to feel like you tend to die so quick late game, it doesn't even feel as much like something he does anymore, at least outside of the early game. And then they decrease shackle damage a little bit. This isn't too big of a change, from 25 to 105 to 20 to 100. So, like, it is a nerf. Late game, you're going to feel almost the exact same. Kabrakan gets a bit of a weird shift. Increased tremor cost by double. So from 10 to 30 mana is now 20 to 60 mana. Decrease the cooldown from 8 to 3. Yes, we are going to play with this. Yes, we are going to go Book of Thoth Kabrakan, max the 3, and see if they die first, if I die first, or if I run first. That is happening. Increased his MP5. He gets mana back if he lands his 2 per enemy hit. So if you, like, stack the wave together, you can get up to like 180 on the wave or something now. I don't know how much that's going to be a thing. I also just realized decreased mana cost to 10 on the 2. I don't know why I guess because it's kind of a reaction ability. I don't know. That's kind of weird, but sure. I don't care. We can literally do away with mana. I do not care. We do not need mana in Smite. This is whatever. Make mana cost whatever you want as long as you don't raise them. Athena getting a shift. Athena removed the slow on her 1. Makes it so that enemies attack slower while affected by the taunt. I'm assuming this will not be bugged, and they will simply attack at the same speed when the taunt is done, whether they beat it or expires. But knowing Smite, I feel like this might get bad. Knowing Smite, I feel like you might get some incredible auto attack desync / bugging with this ability once it's done, and that might be incredibly annoying. Especially, it might even be ping related because netcode's weird in this game. And then they shifted the slow from the 1 over to the 3, so the 3 now slows by 20% for 2 seconds on each hit. So if you're eating that hit again, you're going to get slowed yet again. And then allied gods gain 20% move speed with Athena ult. Yeah, that's happening. They are going to either run you down or run away extra fast. So that'll be a little bit annoying for dealing with her. Athena's always a weird one because I feel like she tends to feel good to me to play. But competitively for a while, she hasn't felt as valuable. This will help her there. Yeah, I don't know. She's somebody, I feel like normally in casuals and ranked, she feels good. It's just like, technically, if you're playing, Athena has such a cap on how good you have to be to play her well, that she hasn't tended to feel good and competitive because there's like Yamojas out there. You can be like a god tier Yamoja, god tier Terra. And there's such a gap between the SPL supports and like just some support in a ranked game or in a casual. So I think this is going to make her very menacing in the lower levels of play, and then maybe good enough that she'll actually get a decent amount of SPL time. We'll have to see. But in other games, she might be really scary as a support pick for a while. And then Amma got a buff to the duration of her passive. And then also, while she's healing in her 1, she gains bonus attack speed, which should feel really, really good. 15 to 35% is quite a bit. Amma procs her passive by auto-attacking to begin with. That means she gets her passive faster. It means she does more DPS. If you're building Amma for damage, it tends to be auto-attack related. So that should be pretty good. Pretty big buff for Amma. Yeah. Kukulkan, baby buff. Very, very minor. Basically doesn't matter, but it exists. His cooldowns on the 3 is going to be a little bit shorter. Maui getting buffed, which I thought was random. Maui's pretty good. I don't know if I've missed something. I feel like he's been at the very least fine, if not straight up strong, in like one of the higher end supports. Maybe I've been missing that, but they made his 1 a decently shorter cooldown, 2 seconds at all ranks, and then also up the damage a little bit at max rank, and then decrease the mana cost a little bit on his 2, which doesn't really matter so much. The Nem decreased mana cost on her 1, I think is Swift Vengeance, pretty much has to be, so it's cheaper at max rank. Then decrease the cooldown by 1 second on her 2, up the scaling a little bit, pretty minor change for Nem. Scotty gets slow immunity while she's buffed by her 3. That'll be really nice for Scotty, so it's easier to actually get away from things, not just get slowed down by like a set 1 or something. You actually get to properly zoom. Ymir gets a little bit of a buff, main thing being that his cooldown on his 1 now gets 2 seconds shorter at max rank. Ymir walls coming back in force. Baba getting kind of a random nerf. I don't think Baba's been super meta. I could be wrong. Like, she's been good, but I don't think she's been crazy meta. So she got a nerf to her ultimate by a decent bit. Charon, decrease the attack speed slow by 5%. Increase the cooldown on, I believe this is his 3. I don't know what else it would be. 2 seconds higher at the early ranks, then scaling still to 15 seconds at the later ranks, which kind of makes sense based on the feel of him. But honestly, Charon has pretty long cooldowns to begin with, so I don't really know if that's the way to go. I feel like they should be making other changes so that maybe his kit's just a little less impactful when he casts it, and he can actually cast it more often. Because to me, that's what it feels like. To me, it feels like he should be fairly spammy, but not insanely strong until he gets to be spammy. And it's kind of vice versa, which feels kind of weird with the way his kit plays, at least to me. Ult cooldown getting 10 seconds longer for Hachiman because he's still been strong. Kind of a weird way, I feel like, to nerf him, but okay. It does make it harder for him to survive ganks early on and stuff with that longer cooldown. Decrease the base tick damage on Yorm at 5 at all ranks, because people have been abusing the hell out of those ticks. So they're trying to nerf them down a little bit, because everybody's getting cheesy with Yorm, and I do respect it, even if I find him too boring to do it myself. Decrease the power a lot on Kali 3, from 10 to 50 to 10 to 30, because Kali has been strong and ranked, and I think this is a weird one, where on its own, this power buff does not look very crazy to begin with. 50 power on Kali of all gods actually makes a lot of sense, and helps fill in how weak she is early game. And it's easy to be like, but Fenrir 2 does all this, but also Fenrir 2 doesn't just give you a 1 second AoE stun. So I actually think this is probably an okay idea, because Kali has felt surprisingly strong early game and then very strong late game. This is actually probably a good way to go for her, so that she's not hitting as hard early on, and she actually does have to scale up with items the way that she used to, at least more so. And they also decrease the damage on her ult by a little bit. Not too big of a deal. Her ult doesn't tend to do very much damage anyways. Definitely not what you're tending to use to do damage. Marty getting some nerfs. These are actually really good nerfs. They're nerfing the lifesteal on both ability and a normal lifesteal on his passive by quite a bit, which has been really strong. And then they're also giving a big nerf to his 2, so his 2 is going to not be quite as a frequent cast as you get it leveled up. It's going to just stay at 13-second cooldown, which that thing gets really annoying with the cooldown build people normally run. You get like Trans Erendite, Soul Eater early on, and within level 13, 14, 15, that guy is just spamming his 2 every 6 seconds and deleting your face. So that's not going to happen quite as much. And then they also nerfed the damage scaling on his ultimate quite a bit. This looks kind of weird. I believe what they're saying. I think before this would have been 16% power scaling per tick, and they're nerfing it down to 12%, as I think would be the math. And then Marty ult, I believe, has either 12 or 15 ticks. I don't remember now. And they're also making it so you can't cast it as often. So pretty big Marty nerf. Good change. They just had to do set dirty, huh? They just had to do set dirty? Yeah, I get it. I get it. Set's one of those gods where he gets wild and ranked, even if he doesn't tend to get wild in SPL. So no longer going to have as much dash damage that they'd given him, I think, not too long ago. It goes down 10% at every rank for casting the 2-1 combo. And then his ult's not going to be quite as fast right away. It's going to be 20 to 30% movement speed scaling on his ultimate. And then also, final things to talk about, Thor nerf. Thor getting a hammer nerf, where he's doing 50-210 goes down to 40-200. So mostly going to stand out early game, will stand out a little bit later in the game as well. But like if you're trading at level 1, this will do up to 120 damage instead of 150 damage, which is actually quite a bit of a swing. And then Anvilodon, tiny bit of scaling nerf to his ultimate. This thing barely matters. It matters so little. 10% scaling on the ult when the ult does so much other damage other than just hit from scaling. So yeah, not a big deal. And then there's this, but I don't care because it's not Conquest. So yeah, that does it for the patch notes. Overall, the big things to keep in mind are going to be Fire Giant changes there. It's probably not going to be super noticeable impact on the game overall, but it will definitely shift the way that Fire Giant fights feel, and it should be cool. I think it should give everybody a lot more freedom to play fights on both sides the way that they want to more, which is, I think, a really good change for Fire Giant. And if they end up wanting to go back to the harder, more locked down Fire Giant in the future, they totally can, and just keep it like this for now. I think that's a good change. Other than that, we have the new totems getting added in, that change to small camps, which I think will be interesting. Not something that I think is going to feel like it stands out a lot for the people taking it, which is going to tend to be the junglers. Like, you're not going to really play your rotations all that differently. It might make it a little bit more of a priority to do that small camp. But what is going to stand out is that new choice you have to take a totem as you're getting deeper into the game and what totems are good and how that impacts your lane. And even depending on the totem that's available, maybe even thinking about the lane differently. Because most of those aren't going to particularly change the way that you play, but cooldown will definitely make it so you get a little more speed to how often you're casting. If both sides are getting the same buff, that might actually be pretty impactful for one side over the other. And then the green buff just kind of makes everybody tanky, and as you get deeper in the game, that buff's going to be really nutty. But I think that's a good change. I think it's cool. It's nice that you actually get to pick what you want as you get those deployed throughout the game. So I think that's a good change as well. And then other than that, we have some kind of minor reworks. They're not really reworks, but like, I don't know what you call them, like significant changes to gods, not to the point that the gods overall different, but that like, it's definitely going to shift their play style a bit. Yeah, those are, I think most of those are interesting and fine and not like just absolutely game breaking or anything. And it's like, sure, go for it. I do think a couple of them are weird, like the Ares and the Raijin ones. I feel like they're pretty misdirected, but at least it's not like trashing the god. It just kind of makes it funky and unnecessary, in my opinion. And other than that, yeah, looking good. I feel like the nerfs and buffs overall in this update were solid. We didn't really get item changes for the most part. Did we get item changes at all? No, we did. Just not ones that were like super impactful or anything. Which Smite's at a fairly balanced point right now. And then obviously we've got the new dishes, the new cheese that we can play with. That I would personally like to see get changed a bit. I don't know if we're going to see it. I would love to see the jungle one get buffed because it's going to be bad. And I would love to see the solo one just be straight up changed. And then other than that, I'm mostly fine with it. I think the idea of a little golden bow, golden blade thing is actually kind of cool. The mage one is going to be really strong on a huge variety of characters, but I do think it's a fine concept to begin with. The support one makes a ton of sense. And honestly, the jungle one makes a lot of sense. It's just not going to be very good. And the solo one kind of lame in my opinion. So yeah, I think that kind of covers our bases. So hopefully you guys are excited for the update like I am. I am planning to dive into PTS a little bit and get some videos up pretty soon with that. I think starting either tomorrow or Saturday, I think we'll be doing some PTS stuff. I kind of don't even want to do it, but I do want to dive in a little bit and mess with some things. And then pretty soon here, the update will be out as well. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one.